Why, hello there. I'm guessing you didn't see Babylon in the title, so you're wise to the fact that I'm going to be talking about penises some more. In case you're wondering, I never was sent a dick pic. I think those were popular in the 80s or 90s because, frankly, had someone sent me a dick pic, I would no longer necessarily be communicating with them. They wouldn't be my kind of people. But now that we're on the subject of dicks and penises, let's talk. Let's talk. I discovered something that I have been on the hunt for the longest time over, and it's how they're keeping their penises intact. Yes, 24/7 penis chat. So, what's the deal? Well, it came from cows, how they learned this. Cows, like, bah, no, that's a sheep. How does a cow? Moo is a cow. Okay, so comes from cows. I wish I was making this up, but I'm not. So let's get going here. Okay, I was running. I've been talking about for a long time that the females on the screen who are transgendered have a tendency to flash around their penis, and I have several clips of them at my website in the file called Transgender Elites, where I have several of them flashing their penis around. And at the top of that file, you will see Kamala Harris. Now, I don't think that is an accident. At first, I thought maybe it was an accident, but I believe that they are letting their penis dangle around because they are proud, because this is who they are. So yeah, the deal with them flashing their penis as they're walking around. I have one of Michelle Obama dancing with her penis flying all over the place. Um, I believe that's on purpose. I don't believe that that is an accident that somebody just caught them at. So, what I'm going to be doing, this is going to be, I talked about vaccines a long time ago. Vaccines comes from the word vaca. Vaca means cow. So I'm going to be playing a couple of quick clips because I'm not going to be doing Babylon. Maybe I'll do it later, but I'm way too nauseous today. And I hope that you're hearing me very clearly, even though it's winter. Get those windows open. People are getting all kinds of brain tumors and stuff for sleeping in positions with their heads facing those smart meters. One woman, her mother died of brain tumors because she had, when you live in a condo unit, you may have the unit that has all the smart meters for your whole group. And if you're that unlucky person, chances are pretty good you're going to get hit. So they did not install these smart meters all over the world as some sort of a joke, right? Because there's lots of issues with them, but not my point for today. And also, you are going to need to get something for the nausea. Marijuana is the only thing to take for the nausea. It calms it down and gets your system back regulated. So I suggest Fern Valley Farms is selling marijuana for like $35, $40 per ounce, which is an incredible price. So even if you're not feeling nauseous right now, what are you going to do when you become nauseous? You notice I said when you become nauseous. These things aren't just passively sitting in our homes. Okay, enough of that. Okay, the first one I'm going to be doing because I talked about vaccines and this vodka business, I don't know, probably a couple of years ago. So let's just do a real quick reminder, okay? The history of the smallpox was the very first vaccine they came up with. And this is just a couple minute clip. So let's go ahead and play this and get everybody up to date.
Smallpox vaccine goes back to the late 18th century and English physician Edward Jenner. It's a story of both reassurance and concern today, says Sam Lemley, curator of special collections at Carnegie Mellon University, which has Jenner's 1798 treatise on the subject. Scientific discoveries can come from unexpected places, but resistance to new ideas can also block their adoption, Lemley says. Jenner heard that dairy maids and farm workers who got cowpox didn't get smallpox. He undertook a series of trials and discovered that injecting the pus from a cowpox sore can provide immunity to smallpox.
I think that his discoveries were met with a lot of skepticism at first. So the book was actually self-published. When Jenner submitted his discoveries to the Royal Society, they rejected it for publication in their journal.
After publication, the religious establishment was hesitant to accept vaccination as a treatment because it seemed so unnatural. Charlatans will claim to be able to do it and end up infecting people, so people didn't trust it at first.
The thought that I have in reading about Jenner is that it's a source of reassurance in some ways, in part because vaccines, the original vaccine, came from such an unexpected place and source, cows. I think that that's true of so many medical advancements. The concern, of course, is the public reaction to the successful introduction of a COVID-19 vaccine. Will everyone sort of sign up, and will everyone agree to take the vaccine to protect the community and those that can't?
Okay, so started in the 1800s. Here again, likely when they took over the game board, they immediately started shooting us up with vaccines and stuff. And that's the part that I find so incredible that we accepted this, because these vaccines supposedly are to inoculate us for things so we don't get them in the future, right? Well, that would make a certain level of sense if you weren't dealing with eugenics psychopaths trying to predict future diseases. I don't know. Maybe that's something somebody should do, but I don't know. They seem pretty obsessed with this disease business. So this is another one I'm going to play real quick, and then we'll get moving. This is only less than 3 minutes. Because the smallpox vaccine was the first vaccine, and it got developed by cows. And cows are used right now to keep the penis intact on the women. So if you're wondering why I'm talking about cows, I do have a point here. And I am going to play this clip because we need to have a little bit of a reminder before I get into how cows make women have penises. God, what a fucking freak show. Okay, here we go.
A deadly disease called smallpox spread among people, causing boils filled with yellow pus to appear all over their bodies. Some people also went blind, and many died. Those who survived the disease were usually left with deep scars. In England in the 18th century, there was a huge outbreak of this horrible disease. But a cattle breeder named Benjamin Jesty observed that a mild disease affecting his cows, called cowpox, looked very similar to the deadly and contagious smallpox. He noticed that cowpox could also affect humans, but in a less severe way than smallpox. The interesting thing was that he himself and the milkmaids who had previously been infected with cowpox never got the horrible smallpox. Somehow, the cowpox infection protected them. This observation inspired Jesty to try and protect his family in the same way. He infected them all with cowpox, and it worked. None of them ever developed smallpox. A few years later, a doctor named Edward Jenner built on Jesty's discovery. He wanted to prove the theory that getting cowpox could protect a person from smallpox. So, he took a bit of pus from a cowpox blister on an infected milkmaid and put it into a cut in the arm of a young boy. When Jenner exposed the boy a few days later to the smallpox virus, he did not develop the disease. Just like Jesty and the milkmaids, his body had learned how to fight the disease.
He did kill a few people with this. They just don't tend to mention that part in these friendly little clips. That with intent, these kids were infected, okay? They knew that they would likely die, or at least that's part of the story, right? How much of it is true? I don't know. Could you imagine joining a profession of people who say, okay, now our biggest invention was smallpox. How'd we figure that out? Well, there was this farmer.
We say he became immune to the disease. This was a crucial step in the development of vaccination. In fact, the word vaccination, thought up by Jenner, comes from the Latin word for cow, vacca. Following Jenner's experiment, smallpox vaccines began to be produced in large quantities. Millions of people got vaccinated in every corner of the world, until in 1980, the World Health Organization announced that smallpox had been eradicated. Today, we no longer need to use the smallpox vaccine as the virus is no longer circulating. This story serves as an example of how vaccines can help in the fight against infectious diseases. Thanks to Jenner's discovery, we got rid of smallpox and are now continuing our work to eradicate other infectious diseases such as polio.
Yes, wonderful stuff, isn't it? They just have to make us sick. Okay, so that's a little refresher course where vaccines came from. Vaccine, vaca equals cow, is a preparation, suspension, or extract of dead, attenuated, weakened germs of a disease which on inoculation, injection, into a healthy person provides temporary, permanent, active, passive immunity by inducing antibodies formation. The word vaccine or vaccination comes from the name for a pox virus, the cowpox virus, vaccinina to be exact. Why did this wonderful tool of immunization, which constitutes one of the greatest hits in the entire history of medicine, get its name from a virus that attacks cows? The Oxford English Dictionary credits the French for coining the term vaccine in 1800 and vaccination in 1803. According to an article in the British Medical Journal, however, the term was used as an adjective in 1799 by British general practitioner Dr. Edward Jenner. Dr. Edward Jenner is a name that you need to put into your head. Indeed, that when talking about vaccines of any kind, it is essential to start with a discussion with the work of Jenner. He lived from 1749 to 1823. He hailed from Gloucester, England in the late 18th century. While making his rounds, Jenner made a stunning observation. Well, actually, they always rewrite these stories. It was that farmer, right? The farmer got wise to the cowpox business. Okay. So between 1796 and 1798, Jenner collected 23 cases of people infected or inoculated with cowpox virus. In a 1798 report, Inquiry into the Causes and Effects of the Variola Vaccine, a disease discovered in some of the western countries of England, which Jenner published at his own expense, that the cowpox protects the human constitution from the infection of smallpox. It was a groundbreaking conclusion that set the fields of immunology, vaccine therapy, and preventative health in motion. So that's where this business with the cows came from, right? So, how did we get to cows? So, let me see. Smallpox existed with humanity for thousands of years, according to their historians, right? All they have to do is write this stuff up, then it becomes fact, right? As human populations in Europe, Asia, and Africa grew, and travel for trade and crusade became more prevalent, smallpox grew and traveled along with us. Why do these stories all kind of sound familiar? I don't know. It just seems like it's all familiar. Remember when COVID took off because everybody was traveling? So, yeah, that's a story about Jenner, okay? Although vaccine comes from the Latin word meaning of or from the cow, today's flu vaccines probably contain more chicken than cow. Most standard vaccines are incubated inside chicken's eggs. And I did a show about chicken eggs and vaccines because the U.S. government owns a bunch of secret chicken farms. What I also discovered around the time that I was doing that show about the chicken farms was that it just seems suspicious to me. Now, just keep in mind, it's just my idea, right? But it just seems suspicious to me that around the same time frame that the U.S. government was coming up with these chicken farms, secret chicken farms, I might add, that they came up with chicken McNuggets at McDonald's. Correlation? I don't know. You do the math. Because they want kids to be eating contaminated food, right? So you really think these people are going to let all those chickens go to waste that they're using in these farms? Of course not. They're going to be selling that chicken meat. So good luck having your dinner tonight. Personally, I can't eat chicken. I can't eat meat. I can't eat any of it. It actually makes me, I don't even want to keep talking about it. Okay, so the fact that they started selling, now I don't know this for a fact, okay, but it just seems suspicious to me that around that same time frame, McDonald's came up with chicken nuggets. That's all I'm going to say. Okay, let's talk about those penises. I've had people ask me this over time. They go, how do you find this stuff? Well, because I never stop looking, okay? I have had this thing about the penises at the top of my head for a very long time. So, and then what'll happen is I'll just be cruising around, and all of a sudden I'll be drawn to maybe one post, okay, maybe one page on Facebook, and then that page will be the page that I needed to find, okay? Because what I did was I'm on Facebook under a different name because I was on there for a couple of years trying to learn the embryo business, because Facebook is where you can go to adopt a baby, or, do all kinds of crazy stuff. So what I did was I thought, out with the old, in with the new. So I got rid of all those groups, and now I'm in a much more fun group of people. So I'm in the group with all the transvestigation people, and I'm really happy to see these kids all get together and talking about things and sharing their information. And I'm in 5 or 6 groups over there. And as it turns out, now remember, I don't have the time or even the interest to spend my time on social media, but as it turns out, of those 5 or 6 groups that I'm in, I just popped open one day and I saw this, and I thought, wow, that's what I've been looking for. It is. It was posted by somebody anonymously, and I will read it to you. And it says, one of the Kabbalah secrets revealed. These people are transformed in utero. And I've talked a lot about, I've been suspicious that it's been going on in utero, but I only had my suspicions, right? I'll continue reading. By the 8th week of pregnancy, the genitalia has not been formed yet. So they inject the opposite hormone. A blood test will reveal if there's testosterone present in the mother's blood. So they inject the opposite hormone, I've been saying that all along, into the womb. The result is that the external part of the body is formed according to the hormone being injected. So a boy will be born with the skeleton of a woman with a penis, but he'll have to take external testosterone for the rest of his life. Conversely, if estrogen is injected, the boy will be born with a vagina, but will not be able to have kids, since they cannot pass through the narrow cavity in the pelvis. Old school transformers would just chop the testes of a boy or give the mother testosterone from animals in order to change the girl. That is their secret. It happens in nature by accident. Google what is Freemartin. I thought, wow, okay. I rushed over to Google Freemartin. Freemartin. I have a quick clip I'm going to play about this Freemartin. I'm going to rely on a few clips here, so let me pull that up. Okay, let me pull this clip up here. And in case you're wondering, why don't I pull them up ahead of time? Why don't I do this and that? Because I am maneuvering my way around, and this is my best effort. So that is what it is. So let's talk a little bit first about these cows. Okay. Calf corner. And this is a clip called Freemartin Heifers. And this man is going to explain it.
As we wrap up this spring's calving season, there's bound to be that question coming from either one of the newspapers, magazines, or even a producer about what the incidence of multiple births are in beef cattle. You see, some producer has found that he had triplets, or in some very rare cases, even quadruplets, and would like to know how often those things occur. Well, there's not a lot of scientific literature that helps answer those questions, but there are a few situations as we look back through the literature that gives us at least some idea of what to expect. In the case of twinning, we think that the incidence in beef cattle is someplace between 0.5% and 1% of births ending up as twins. When we get to triplets, it's 1 in about 100,000. And if you have that very rare situation of quadruplets that live, it's only 1 in 700,000, according to the literature estimates. So those things are pretty rare. I think the key things that we want to remember if we have a multiple birth on our operation is that if we have a heifer born twin or triplets to bulls, that heifer has a 95% or higher chance of being infertile. She's what we call a Freemartin. We want to mark down in our record books right now when we see that heifer calf born twin to a bull, and remember not to keep her as a replacement heifer. We want to go ahead and cull her and send her on to the feedlot to be fed out as choice beef. That's also, I think, a good reason to remember that if you're raising replacement heifers this year and breeding them, let's go ahead and have those heifers pregnancy checked as soon as your local veterinarian is willing to do that, and cull any heifers that didn't get bred in that first breeding season, because a few of those might be that Freemartin that slipped through the cracks in terms of our record keeping, or if we purchased the heifers, we had no chance of knowing that one or more of those might have been born twin to a bull. So let's remember that any heifer born twin or as triplets to bull calves is going to be one that we want to cull, send on to the feedlot, and not keep as a replacement. Hey, we look forward to visiting.
So I was thinking last night, I was thinking, well, I wonder how they get some of these Freemartins in cows just randomly, right? Well, do you realize that cows get a whole bunch of vaccines themselves? So maybe in those vaccines, there's some hormones, because for a long time, you probably thought I was joking, but I was never joking. I would not joke about children. I've been saying for the longest time that I believe, and I believe this 100%, that the children born in hospitals in this country are taken to the back of the hospital, they're injected up with vaccines, and what is to stop them from giving the boys some estrogen and the girls, and that also could start to answer some of these high fertility rates. So let me clip onto this clip here, a little bit more about Freemartinism. Okay, I'm not going to play that one. So anyway, so let me get back over here. So now we know that it happens in cows, right? And genetically, the animal is chemetic. So they show the different chromosomes, which is more than my brain can necessarily handle right now. So the term Freemartin is uncertain. Speculations include that free may indicate willing or exempt from reproduction, referring to its sterility, or to a farmer's decision to not bother trying to breed a Freemartin or both, or that it may be derived from a Flemish word for a cow which gives no milk and has ceased to be capable of bearing offspring. Martin is generally held to derive from an Irish or Gaelic word for cow or heifer, although connections to Martimas have also been posted. So In most cattle twins, the blood vessels become interconnected, creating a shared circulation for both twins. If both fetuses are the same sex, this is of no significance. But if they are different, male hormones pass from the male twin to the female twin. The male hormones, testosterone, then masculinize the female twin, and the result is a Freemartin. The degree of masculinization is greater if the fusion occurs earlier in the pregnancy. In about 10% of cases, no fusion takes place and the female remains fertile. The male twin is largely unaffected by the fusion, although the size of the testicles may be slightly reduced. Testicle size is associated with fertility, so there may be some reduction in bull fertility. Freemartins behave and grow in a similar way to castrated male cattle or steers. So yeah, they can do tests for all of this stuff, but I believe 100% that this is what we're looking at. So Freemartins are occasionally used in stem cell and immunology research. During fetal development, cells are exchanged between the fused circulations of the bovine twins. Up to 95% of the Freemartin's blood cells can be derived from those of her twin brother. That's very interesting. So 95% of the Freemartin's blood cells can be derived from those of her twin brother. Male-derived cells and their progeny can be easily visualized in the Freemartin tissues, as only they contain the male Y chromosome. Thus, by analyzing these tissues, one can investigate the capacity for stem cells. Yeah, they do know a lot about stem cells, right? They're doing all this IVF business. Okay, and remember, I'm always talking about predictive programming. So where do we see these words? Well, the word Freemartin. In the Huxley novel, Brave New World, a Freemartin mentioned in chapters 1, 3, 11, and 17 is a woman who has been deliberately made sterile by exposure to hormones during fetal development. In the book, government policy requires Freemartins to constitute 70% of the female population. A side effect of this is some Freemartin women having developed beards. The Robert Heinlein novel Beyond the Horizon lists the clever and repulsively beautiful pseudo-feminine Freemartins as one of the genetically engineered specialty types of humans that were created in the Emperor of the Great Khans. In this same Heinlein's other novel called Farmhold's Freehold, the protagonist, Hugh Farnham, is given a companion called a bedwarmer that is described as a natural Freemartin. In this other book, The House the Blakeys Built, the cattle are Freemartins. In the fantasy book series Brazil Broketail, Freemartin is the name for a breed of sterile female dragons. In Footfall, this Larry Niven book, a lithely built human woman uses the term Freemartin to describe herself while doubting her sexuality. In Nicola Griffin's novel Hild, the title character is sometimes referred to by others as a Freemartin in reference to her non-feminine character and social role. In this other book called The Matrix from 2021, 12th century English peasants used Freemartins to pull wagons. So, can Freemartins get pregnant? since a Freemartin can't get pregnant, she can't produce milk. Our Freemartin calves are sold to the same person that buys our bull calves that are raised for beef. I found that on some beef sellers page. Okay, so yeah, 100%. That's exactly what they are doing. Okay, I don't think I have much else here. They got it from the cows. And these same people, right after that, they invented, let me see. This is how crazy this whole thing is, right? Back in the 18th century, when this all was taking place, it was a wonder how anyone ever survived a trip to the doctor. Many didn't. England's drugstores were stocked with bull penises, frogs, lungs, and powdered Egyptian mummy, which was evidently used against tuberculosis. Syphilis, known as the Great Pox, was treated with mercury. Never mind that it made you slobber and eventually go mad. The Scottish physician John Brown, the author of Elementary Medicine, simply gave his patients roast beef, opium, and booze. Many people thought he was pretty much a genius. So, I mentioned in the past that I don't listen to my shows until they're already uploaded and done, right? Because what would be the purpose? I haven't edited my work. I mean, I started off with actually a podcast producer, and they managed the volume and the sound and all that stuff. But they never took out words that I said or anything like that. So when I was listening to it last night, the show about the space thing, and I said that Washington, D.C., symbolically to these people, I do not make this stuff up. This is not something out of my wild little imagination here. They do indicate that Washington, D.C., being the head of the war machine, is a phallic symbol. They have those symbols all over the place. I did not design those symbols. I did not construct those symbols. So when I commented at the show, I said that Washington, D.C. is like the big penis, and it is, in fact, the big penis. So why would they have all these statues all over the place, right? So it is their power symbol, and I believe that the one in Washington, D.C. is the biggest phallic symbol around, right? So then I went on to say that what does that make Virginia and Maryland? They're on either side of Washington, D.C. You got Virginia and Maryland, or Virgin and Mary, right? And I said, what does that make them? Ball sacks? Well, I was kind of joking, and I really wasn't, because I believe that the hormones make them have smaller balls than regular, okay? Because that's where the testosterone is. Now, I could be wrong about that part. I didn't take any science classes, but after I listened to myself calling the CIA and the people at in Maryland is where Fort Detrick is, head of evil there, and then in Virginia you've got the CIA and DARPA and all those freaks. So I thought, well, I have only been speaking out because it's the truth, okay? And by speaking out, I have essentially, and I will use another penis expression, I am essentially cock-blocking them from any more activity toward me and my home. So what could they do next? Well, they could drone my house. That's always a possibility. I hope they don't, not because of any fear that I have, because I don't have any particular fear about these people. But if they drone my house, that would not be a good thing, because I do not want to see my neighbors getting murdered because of my activities here. So keep in mind that words come with consequences. Supposedly there is a man right now who is facing prison time, seriously, for a meme that he put out about Hillary Clinton. Psychopaths have incredibly thin skin. They act big, tough, and bullies and stuff, but they buckle quicker than anything. So Could I possibly be setting them off to an attack? Maybe, but I'm willing to take that risk because the truth matters to me. And yes, they are the ball sacks on that big penis, now aren't they? Because they came up with the symbols, so don't get mad at me for calling you ball sacks. Your own people came up with this stuff. I am just recording my work as I go along. I have no interest in making up stories or tall tales about people's penises. So, with that said, I'm going to put it on hold for a second to make sure I got it all covered. Also, I'd like to address one thing that I didn't address at the opening. There was a big deal made in the news this week about these kids. They were out at protests and they were confused about Hamas, and they were a couple of black kids naturally, so they had to poke fun at them and say, oh, look at these kids, they're out these protests and they don't really understand what Hamas is. Hey, how about this? How about if we encourage those kids instead of ragging them down? How about if we raise them up? How about if somebody puts those kids under their wing and explains to them what these things are? When I was a kid and going around and stuff, I didn't know every implication about a protest. I just went and tried to learn. So instead of criticizing these kids for getting out and doing something, how about if we pat them on the head and say, that is just absolutely the most terrific stuff on earth to see these kids out there. And I think a lot of them have been meeting up. There were some kids and people up in Washington State, and they stopped a shipment of some weapons for a few days. They put up a good fight. There were only a couple dozen of them. So I would actively engage. But these groups are so infiltrated. My suggestion is join in, but be more of a lone wolf yourself. Don't join in to get, well, anyway, do what you want to do. But all I'm saying is these groups are also infiltrated. So when you join a group to go do some activity, I would position myself more as a lone wolf in the group versus one who is at the center of the group. That gives you greater capability for shedding the group and moving on. So I've always ended up being a lone wolf in my work, not by choice, but because people don't want to help me. So if you sit around waiting for somebody else to do something, you'll never get anything done. So how about if we encourage these kids instead of criticizing them? So that's all I got for now. Be safe out there, and goodbye for now. Mark my word, we're going into lockdowns anytime. The best way to cover all this deception is by war. I believe strongly that World War III is right around the corner. I would not sit around and delay, and there is something to over-planning things, overthinking it. That's all I'm going to... My boy Marcos left the game board a couple weeks ago, and I couldn't be sadder. I know he had to go. He hung in there for so long. He was in such bad shape. I had to let him go. And remember, love is everywhere. Just look for it, okay? Just look for it. Don't reject what you don't understand. And don't hate what you don't understand. It won't get you anywhere. It'll just make you end up like one of them. So be safe out there, and goodbye for now.